My experience in interviewing the 127 women that Dr. Katie Roberto and I interviewed, it was exhilarating. It was challenging in a sense where sometimes there were deep emotional moments where some of the women that we interviewed, they cried, they reflected, and sometimes I didn't know how to be. Now, I'm a natural empathetic person, and I'm a hugger. So I didn't want to overstep boundaries. It was kind of like the comforting part of Jermaine Davis wanted to reach over and hug the person who was being interviewed. So when I say I was challenged, not so much in a negative way, but more so in a way where I wanted to respect boundaries, but also I wanted to comfort people during their breakthrough moments and sometimes some of their sad moments. But I don't regret doing it. Actually interviewing these 127 women changed my life forever. It made me more empathetic. It helped me understand the Native American proverb when it says, "Oh great spirit, do not allow me to judge my sister or brother until I have walked a mile in their moccasins." So I had the opportunity for 60 to 90 minutes to listen to 127 women's deep stories about how they engineered and navigated, sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully, in the workplace. So I would say interviewing these women will help me be a better advocate in the space for gender equity and gender equality and gender fairness. Because here I am, like when people cry, the natural part of Jermaine Davis is to reach for them, to comfort them, and to soothe them through that. That's who I am. And so in my mind I was thinking, professional boundaries, let's be ethical, let's be respectful. So at times I didn't know how to be between the Jermaine Davis who I am and the professionalism that I'm supposed to display in that context. So that was the personal challenge for me. You know, I'll be honest, I grew up in a single parent home. So I grew up with my mother. And I was raised with my grandmother and I was raised with my aunts. Now my uncles were there as well, but I was around women a lot. So the variety of emotions, the variety of thought patterns. So as a man, I'm not uncomfortable with a quote unquote female expression. I'm not uncomfortable with tears. Like some people, both women and men are uncomfortable with tears. I'm not. Sometimes when I'm teaching a class, sometimes when I'm facilitating a workshop, I see people who cry. And sometimes I'll pause. Sometimes a person may raise their hand and they may start to share a breakthrough moment that they're having. And I don't speed through those moments. I welcome that energy. I welcome that vibe into the context because it's authentic and it's natural. So I'm comfortable with tears, but I'm comfortable with the human expression. That's what's important to me. I never want to stifle a person's ability to be true to themselves. My goal is to foster and to cultivate an environment where people can be authentically who they are and feel safe and welcome in my presence. That's what I seek to do. It's like the term that I was teaching in my presentation, emotional contagion. Emotional contagion is the transference of a person's attitude and emotional state onto other people. So I know as a facilitator and a speaker, I play a key role in setting the tone and the environment. So if I'm uptight and I'm anxious, I might exude that. I might demonstrate that in my behaviors. But if I'm relaxed, I go with the flow, I trust the process, people typically take more risk in my presentation. Both women and men, honestly. Dr. Katie Roberto and I both have our strengths. So there was a certain skill set that she brought to the book and the interview process, and there was a skill set that I brought to the book and the interview process. And one of the things we talked about, I'm the type of person where I can improvise and create on the spot. Now, by profession, Dr. Katie is a project manager. She's very structured, she's very organized, She knows how to stay on task. She gets stuff done. But sometimes interviews don't go in a linear fashion. And sometimes we had participants who said, let's skip that question. Or can I come back to that question? Or sometimes they would say, I'm not ready for that. And then sometimes at the very end of the interview, when we're wrapping up, they'll say, you know what? No, I want to come back to that question. And so I can improvise right on the spot and get into the flow. So that's one of my strengths. So as we began to interview more and more women, we became more clear and crisp. We were able to play devil's advocate. We learned strategies and techniques on how to set the tone a little bit faster. You know, probably those first 20, 25 interviews, you know, we were trying to figure out, you know, how do we really set the tone? But when you interview 127 people, and we interviewed 127 professional women at various levels in their careers, you learn how to adapt and to adopt and to customize right on the spot so you can be effective. We actually was offered a book deal by a reputable publisher, but we turned it down. We turned it down because they only wanted us to interview name brand professional women in entertainment, in business, in sports. But at first we were excited. You know, we came up with this idea. We brainstormed this idea. This was our baby. This was our child. We gave birth to this idea. So we presented to a few literary agents, and right on the spot, when we pitched the idea, Katie and I were in LA at a hotel, and we pitched the idea. Right away, they want to offer us a book deal. And we thought about it, and we said, no, that's not the direction we want to go in. We want to interview everyday women that other women can actually aspire to become. There's only going to be so many Katie Courics. There's only going to be so many Oprah Winfreys. There's only going to be so many professional WNBA players. You know what I mean? Like we wanted to interview women that everyday college women, upon completing their degree, could actually aspire to get in those roles and positions. And so for us, it was maintaining the integrity of the project. So don't get me wrong, I would love to interview the Ursula Burns of the world, the CEO of Xerox, or you know, interviewing the CEO of General Motors, you know, which is a female now. So that would have been cool. But you know what? There's only a few slots for some of those positions. The women that we interviewed, and you don't have to sell out to stand out, represents, if I can say, the middle 80, right? So you got a top 10%. Those are those elite positions and those elite roles that are high profile perhaps. Those are those positions that are really coveted, only very few women get to. But we interviewed very successful women who were entrepreneurs, who started their own business. Maybe they owned a coffee shop. Maybe they were a director. Maybe they were a VP. You know, maybe they were a dean, a college president. Like people could actually achieve these dreams and goals by following certain career engineering pathways. One of the interviews I remember most was we interviewed someone from General Mills. We interviewed a woman from General Mills. And I just remember when she explained and she broke down this concept. You must add value. You must add value. You must make deliberate, intentional, and purposeful contributions. And the moment you stop adding value, you take yourself out of the process of being promoted, getting the high pay, or getting the coveted position. So she talked about the 3 Ps: pay, position, and promotion. And she was showing the correlation between make sure that you're adding value. Don't just occupy a space. And she talked about this. And as a female, your work is going to be analyzed, evaluated, and examined very differently than your male counterparts. She said, now you can call that sexism, you can call that gender stereotypes or gender biases. She said, you must know that your work is going to be looked at different. So make sure you're constantly adding value. My aha moment was the deep emphasis she put on continuously add value. And understand, because you are different, your difference does make a difference. Whether you like it or not, right, wrong, or indifferent, your difference does make a difference. So make sure you're constantly adding value. Adding value may be that you consistently make contributions in the meeting. You know, you make appropriate contributions. So adding value may be when there's a problem or issue, you make sure that you provide solutions to the problem. So there are some people in the workplace who are phenomenal at pointing out problems, but they don't have a solution. And that pains some people when you point out problems, but you don't offer solutions. So one of the things that came up is, what if every time there was a problem, you minimally provided 3 possible solutions? See, that's value add. And then you also get branded. You get branded as a problem solver. You get branded as an individual that when we have issues, tension or conflict, you're trying to resolve the conflict. If we have a headache on our team, you're going to provide the medication to soothe the headache. And so an individual who adds value is a person who is contributing as opposed to contaminating their industry, their team, or their organization. So you got to think about it like this. Every day when I show up to work, am I contaminating my work environment, or am I contributing to my work environment? And this is where you make contributions to move the business forward, to move the team forward, or to serve your organizations, your customers, your clients, or your community. It was important for me to work on this project because there's a part of Jermaine Davis who wants to make things better. I know that there are all kind of isms that exist. And so one of the privileges that I have is I have male privilege. There are certain things I don't have to go through as a male because in our society, historically, men have had the upper hand. Because I believe in equality, because I believe in equity, and because I believe in justice, I always ask myself, how can I influence positive change from the seat that I sit in? I'm a college professor. I write books. I'm a professional speaker. I have the opportunity to use my platform to provoke people to think about things that they never think about. So I challenge people. It reminds me of a quote by James Baldwin, when James Baldwin says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." Sometimes I bring up issues around how do we make our society better? How do we make our communities better? How do we make our organizations better? How do we make them more gender friendly? How do we actually begin to leverage the unique talents, abilities, gifts, and skills of women that may go unnoticed because men aren't really thinking about casting them in those particular roles? See, we're creatures of habit. People typically do the same things over and over again until someone challenges their inertia. And so that's one of the things that I do. I challenge people to think about, hey, how do you make decisions? Are your decisions equitable? Are you being fair? Are you only hiring your homies or your cronies? Are you practicing nepotism? Are you missing out on that untapped resource? And so when we talk about women's leadership and women's development, I think we miss out on major opportunities And so I use my influence to provoke thought about how to make a difference. You know, there's tons of research out there. You know, there's journal articles that are being written every day. There's popular culture articles being written every day. But one of the common denominators that my co-author and I both have is that we both love stories. We both love those qualitative stories, people's experience. We want to get into people's lived experience. What have you lived personally and professionally? So during the interview process, we get to bring that out. And then we get to create a space and a place for people to talk about things that maybe they've stuffed, they've suffocated, you know, they've buried in order just to move forward. This is why in certain interviews there were women who cried, because as we asked certain questions, women would say, wow, I haven't thought about this in 10 years. I haven't thought about this in 20 years. And then sometimes it would just go blank in an interview because they were reliving some of the challenges, you know, that they had. You know, think about this. You're competent, but you keep getting passed over. So think about this. Mary Kay, who started Mary Kay Cosmetics. One of the reasons she left her corporate position is because she was a great performer, but due to sexism, she kept getting passed over. So she got frustrated and she said, you know what? If they're not gonna celebrate me, I'm gonna take my talents, abilities, gifts, and skills and start my own company. Do you know that there's thousands of companies that are started each year because women are being denied access and opportunity to the big positions? And they're frustrated. So you know what they do? They take their intellectual capital, they take their resources, and they go start a company. So sometimes we lose in organizations, we lose great women as a result of institutional and systemic gender biases and sexism. So this is why this is important. Now when I'm speaking, sometimes people are uncomfortable because sometimes people don't want to accept the fact that it's still there. You know, here's what comes up. Aren't there more women in the workplace than men? Aren't over 50% of the women in the workplace occupying those roles and positions? But again, yes, but those are those low-level positions. As you begin to move up the ladder, you see more men. Now here's the irony to this. There are more women graduating with college degrees than ever before. More MBAs, more law degrees, more science degrees. So you can't tell me they're not smart and intelligent women who are capable of handling those big roles. So we gotta ask the question, what's the problem? For us, the qualitative research is we get to leverage stories. And we like to teach through storytelling. Don't get me wrong, I'll talk about theories in my presentation. I love talking about theories. I'm a college professor, but here's my teaching philosophy. And Dr. Katie Roberto is also a college professor. Our philosophy is this: from theory to practice. Practical application. In other words, how can I use this now? So sometimes when people research, not all times, but they're rehashing theories. But when you talk to a person and you say, hey, tell me your experience. What is it like? What is it like for you as a young woman, as I experienced the other day when I went to a college and spoke? This school is well known for their welding program. There's a young woman, for whatever reasons, hey, I want to be a welder. But because there's not very many women who are welders, she's being denied access. Because some people are saying, well, I don't want you to be a welder. Go do this. So sometimes we don't want to deal with those issues. So we're denying people of the opportunity to bring their full humanity to whatever they decide to do. She likes, she wants to be a welder. And here's the interesting thing. Her teacher said that she's one of the top 10 welders in the program. But you know what happens? When she leaves that school and goes to a job fair, you know what happens? People's biases, assumptions, prejudices, and stereotypes get in the way of them being able to engage her in the fair and equitable interview process. So sometimes their conscious and unconscious biases says, I don't want to work with a female welder. No. Now, if I have power and influence, I could deny you access and opportunity within my organization. You know what that's called? Discrimination. So this is how it plays out. This is why this topic is important. This is why it's important to learn the stories. So when I heard that story the other day, I'll never forget that. When I looked at that woman and I looked at her body language, I looked at her facial expression, I looked at her eyes, I looked at her gestures, I looked at her body. I saw a woman who was talented, but she was feeling helpless and hopeless about going into a career that she had trained for. That saddens me. As a matter of fact, it agitates the hell out of me. I'm just being real. So you're denying talent. You're denying someone of something that they're passionate, that they're interested about. They have an affinity towards this. So that's why the stories are important to me. It's important for men to join this movement because a successful change effort, in my opinion, requires synergy. I love the word synergy. Synergy says all of us working together collectively on this issue increases our probability of being more effective. You can have the lone wolf doing something solo. Now, it's not that they can't have success, and it's not that they can't have traction, but you have greater success, greater traction, greater momentum when you have synergy, when you have a plethora of people, a group of people, a united front saying, listen, let's leverage the talents of women. Let's look at our policies, our practices, and our procedures. What do we need to do differently? Do we need to deconstruct and destroy some of these policies, practices, and procedures because they naturally deny women access and opportunity? So you gotta have both women and men looking at these policies, practices, and procedures as a united front. So you need a united front. You need that effort. You need collaboration. You need cooperation. And you need communication between both genders. Get them on the same page. I guarantee you, you will see an exponential explosion when people work together, both women and men. What does good look like for women in the workplace based on this work? Good looks like, to me, based on the women that we interviewed, is that women have access and opportunity to release and unleash their talents in the workplace, where discrimination is no longer a barrier. Actually, that's great. When a woman can say whatever field that they want to go into, that they have access and opportunity, that they have a fair shot without their gender getting in the way. Oh, is she going to be too emotional? Wow, if she gets pregnant, what's going to happen? Now, I'm not saying that some issues aren't concerns, but good looks like to me when we can have a full discussion on what the workplace needs to look like. So we might need to look at how do we reinvent? Because really the workplace is really set up for men. But there's some shifts now. And here's what I mean by that. I like that organizations now are not just having maternity leave, they're having paternity leave. Now, I gotta say this. As a professional speaker and college professor and writer, My schedule allows me to spend significant amount of time with my son. You know, I have my busy seasons, but you know what? I bonded with my son those first 3 years. You know, there's theories out there that talk about from birth to 3. That from 0 to 3, engaging with your son or daughter with meaningful touches, conversations, play activity begins to shape their self-esteem, their self-concept, their personality. They develop a sense of safety and comfort. I don't think women should just have that opportunity. I think men should have that opportunity as well. And because I had that opportunity, that was phenomenal. So when I see organizations now offering men paternity leave, I think that that is a shift in a direction of inclusion. So that's part of deconstructing a mental model that the American workplace has had for years, centuries. Now here's the challenge though. When men say that I want to take paternity leave, does the culture bite them for leveraging that? See, again, this is one of those gender differences and gender-based stereotypes. We expect women to take a maternity leave, right? But what if I say, hey, you know what? I want to take a paternity leave. I want 12 weeks off so I can bond with my son or daughter. See, it's looked at differently then. Right? That's another gender inequity, inequality, because historically, we assign that position or that opportunity for who? Women. So if we're going to re-look at things, what good or great in the workplace looks like to me is revisiting, again, what are our policies? What are our practices? What are our procedures? What do we need to do differently to be inclusive and to leverage the talent pool? And that talent pool consists of both women and men. And one does not trump the other. That's what good and great looks like as we move toward creating a workplace that makes everyone feel safe, appreciated, respected, and valued. I did not take a formal paternity leave because my schedule allowed me the freedom and the flexibility to spend qualitative and quantitative time with my son. So I got quality time and quantity of time with my son because of my schedule. Can I tell you something else? We're connected. We're connected. My son knew my voice. He knew my voice. Like when he was within those first 12 weeks, if I came in a room and I started to talk, his eyes would flicker. And he would start trying to look around because he knew my voice. That's that bonding time. That's that deep bonding time, right? So he got familiar. He got acquainted with my voice. He got acquainted with certain songs. Now, I'm not saying that a father or mother can't make those connections at night or in the morning, but I had time throughout the day, take naps. So that was significant, and we're closer. You know, it's interesting, when Dr. Katie and I began interviewing the 127 women, and then after the interviews, we started looking at all the data and we started looking at all the patterns that emerged. So our population are women, and particularly women who are starting off in their professional careers. So college women would really benefit from this, as well as career-oriented women, but really focus in that middle level of their career. Now, it's not that a professional woman who's been in her career 20, 30 years could not benefit from some of the standout gifts in the book. But however, our target market are college females to that middle, you're in the middle of your career. But we also had a breakthrough moment. The information that we got from the women that we interviewed was consistently said that this information will benefit women who are just starting out in their career and women who are still trying to find their way. That was one of the consistent patterns that emerged when we analyzed the research. Again, can other women glean wisdom from this book? Absolutely. But here's the breakthrough moment that we have. Men who are allies, men who want to make changes around gender equity and gender equality and gender fairness could read this book and also utilize this information. So they can read the book and also begin to learn. How can I become a better leader around inclusion with respect to gender differences? As a matter of fact, there was a gentleman who came up today who said, I came to this presentation because I just got a promotion. Now, he's been a manager at 3 different levels and times within his organization. But here's what he said. I've always managed men. This time, I have 12 women. So this mattered to him. So sometimes people ask the questions, what difference does the difference make? What difference does the difference make? So in his case, the gender difference was going to make a difference for him. You know why? Because he's never managed 12 women before. You know what he said? In my other positions, I was strong, competent, capable. He says, now this is a new territory and I want to be successful. I want to be effective. So now he acknowledged that this difference is going to make a difference for him. Because how he managed, supervised, and led men may not work. More than likely won't work. Because there are some gender differences that will emerge in those work interactions. And if he's not conscientious of those things, if he's not inclusive, he will not be able to motivate, inspire, and influence those women to do great work. So we talked about how to set a positive culture and climate. So you got to do some things different. You just can't say, hey, I was successful over here, and what worked over here is going to automatically work over here. No, that's not the case. You got to be doing some things different. And this is why diversity matters. Whenever I talk to people about diversity, I said diversity matters because people are different. There's different cultures, and gender is one of those core dimensions of diversity. And so I applauded him. I celebrated the fact that he wanted to be effective in this new role. And he acknowledged this reality. The reality is these are not 12 men, these are 12 women. I love that. I love that. I love that he was willing to invest in his future. How would Dr. Katie Roberto answer these questions? Of course, we're different. I'm a man, she's a woman. Now, we have some similarities, right? We have some core things that unite us. We have similar values around this work, around equity-based work, equality-based work, social justice-based work. But I'm quite sure, I'm actually 100% emphatic that she would answer some of these questions very differently, and then she can go deeper in her emotions on some of these issues because she's experienced some of these things. So there would be some overlap, there would be some reinforcements, but you will get turns and twists that Jermaine Davis can't provide. But one of the things about my co-author, and I'll say this and I mean this, she's very smart, she's very thoughtful, she has really good stories, but she has this advocacy part of her that really says we need to do this now. We need to make changes now. And she can provide the business case. What's the business case from a gender perspective, right? She can give you all the statistics about women's buying powers and what percent of this and what percent of that. So she's passionate about those things. But her ultimate goal, where we both meet one another, when we have a meeting of the minds and a connection of the emotions, is this. We want women to stand out authentically without selling out, without compromising their integrity to experience success and victory in the workplace or in life or in school. So that's where we're connected. What was fun about working with Katie, again, is she had her certain strengths. Again, she's very organized, very detailed, and that was an area that I needed. So she helped me in that area. And then the truth of the matter is, there were certain questions I felt she was able to ask as a woman without getting penalized, right? And again, that's gender. That's gender. And then there were certain questions that I was able to engage the women that we interviewed that was endearing as well. I was working with Dr. Katie Roberto in the workplace. Her organization hired me and awarded me a 4-year contract to do some training with them. And so her team managed me. So I got an opportunity to see her leadership capabilities and capacities. And then there were times where we facilitated together in the workplace. So we had some natural energies and synergies because we had worked very close together. So I got a chance to see her talents, abilities, gifts, and skills. And one of the things I saw was she's very sharp and really quick, where I move a little bit slower. And so at that time, I had never met someone who could size up a situation and move very rapidly and get positive results. I mean, to this day, you know, I used to call her at that time NBA Katie, right? Because at that time she had completed her Master's of Business Administration, and I would call her NBA Katie because she knew the business and she was really sharp. And so she liked the work that I was doing, and I liked the work that she was doing. So we would talk about, hey, you know what? We should partner together. We should collaborate on a project. And so we were always waiting on that project, and then this project emerged. I like to say it came to us as a gift. And this was the project that we decided to work on. And because I had an opportunity to see her professional track record, I already knew I wanted to work with her because she was talented. And I looked at it, and she looked at it as, I bring something and Jermaine brings something, and let's put it together and make it more powerful. So I love working with sharp people because sharp people sharpen me. Smart people help me grow. They help me develop and go to the next level. Like, it's important to me when I talk about why this topic is important to me, because part of my socialization and my frame of reference, I grew up in a single parent household. And my mother was strong, and she was weak. She was happy, she was sad, but she got results. And so to me, my mental motto is, I look at people who are competent. I don't struggle with a woman, a female, in a position of power and influence. Like, that does not bother me. The most important thing, the fundamental question I have is she or he capable? Are they competent? That's what's important to me. When I received an email to speak at the 13th Annual Diversity Leadership Alliance Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, I was excited. I was happy. And I felt deeply honored because they requested the presentation, "You Don't Have to Sell Out to Stand Out." And I was the only man who spoke at this conference this year. So I felt really honored. They wanted to know the research. What did your research share? What did it show? What can it teach the women and men in our audience so it can empower them to be better leaders, to be better mentors, to be better coaches, to be better colleagues, co-workers? That's what they were getting at. But I'll be lying if I didn't acknowledge that I felt really special, because they could have picked one of my other presentations, but they wanted this presentation, and they selected me. And in that, I felt like I really needed to give people substance and content to help them be more effective in their personal and professional life around this topic. Well, you know, my goal is to do more work around this. My goal is to go out on college campuses, university campuses, corporations, and talk more about how do we cultivate a space and a place where women can do their best work, where they can stand out authentically and naturally without compromising their values to achieve their academic and workplace dreams and goals. That's important to me. That's going to be a staple in my life. Even if people don't invite me to speak on this particular topic, the issue is still important to me. Amongst conversations that I have with my friends, I teach about this in my college classrooms as a professor. I teach communication studies, but I talk about gender differences, gender communication. How does gender influence how you manage, lead, and make decisions? Any company, organization, or institution that's committed to gender equity, gender equality, and how to create a practical space and place for these conversations to happen. You know, without people being punished. So you got to understand, when people are used to having a certain culture or climate, and you're challenging people to do something different, it ruffles some people's feathers. It makes people feel uncomfortable because of fear of the unknown. What does this mean for me? What do I need to do differently? But you cannot have change without challenge. No change happens without challenge. And challenge is not an ugly thing, it's not a bad thing. So the challenge is asking people to do some things differently, to behave differently, to think differently, to manage differently, to lead differently, with an inclusive lens, to embrace everyone who's a part of your team, your community, or organization.